It was never really about stopping violence from the big tech companies and from the left and the Democrats. We know that because they didn't want to shut down violence for months when their side was doing it. We know that. Political violence was something the left was willing to embrace. It was about justice, they said. That's what they told us. And now, when there is an outburst of reprehensible political violence that comes ideologically from the right in this Capitol Hill riot, they try to leverage this for maximum political gain. The best way to get all of this to stop, the best way to bring us together would be, of course, to be fair-minded about this, to be honest, and not to immediately seek to use this to bash the other side as though they're all domestic terrorists, and that's what they're doing. That is what you see happening right now. The precedent that was set with yesterday's impeachment is awful because it all rested on a false premise. If they had impeached the president of the United States for misleading the American people about what he could prove in the election, if they were going to say that it was just unpresidential to do that, that's their opinion, and they would be on much firmer ground. Although, would that rise to a high crime and misdemeanor? No. But instead, what they did was say it is a direct incitement to insurrection that President Trump is guilty of. It's his fault, you see. He called for this. And then they used that to ram through an impeachment that really ignored due process, which is supposed to exist even in Congress, ignored historical precedent, and was all about one thing and one thing only, creating a one-party state in America, the destruction of the Republican Party. It's always very amusing when Democrats say that they want to see Republicans speak truth to their own side and reform when they really just want the collapse. And they understand that if the Republican elites and elected officials cave in to the Democrat mob on this one and cast out Trump entirely, try to erase his legacy and humiliate not just him, but also his supporters, it will be a disaster for the Republican Party. This was all based on a lie. How do we know it's a lie that Trump incited an insurrection? It's obviously true there was a riot. It's obviously true it was criminal and wrong what happened in the Capitol building. We've already said that. I'm not going to just keep repeating it endlessly so that the left-wing, destructors of conservative media can't just get away with whatever they want, right? We're trying to prevent them from, because right now they're on a witch hunt. They want to ruin people on our side. But I have condemned it. I condemned it right away, and it was, that. Okay. But they're claiming that Trump was the reason for this. Now, part of the problem they have is what Trump actually said. Let's be very clear. Play clip 3.
And only count the electors who have been lawfully slated. Lawfully slated. I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. Today we will see whether Republicans stand strong for integrity of our elections, but whether or not they stand strong for our country.
Peacefully and patriotically have your voices heard. If that can be considered an incitement to violence, to mob violence, for which you will be held legally responsible, which is what the Democrats are doing here. That's what they're saying. They will use a process of government to go after you. And they're even talking about possible criminal charges against Trump for this. If go peacefully speak your mind is now a criminal act, political speech in this country is over on the conservative side. We're done. Because they'll just say anything that they don't like. Anytime there's a rhetorical flourish, we say we must stand up and fight for our liberties. Oh, that's a call to violence. He said fight. Oh, you think that's extreme? You think they won't do it? We saw this coming. You should remember that for years, the left was running a propaganda campaign. It started on the college campuses, then it filtered into the rest of the most woke outposts in society, and now it's mainstream. Now it's corporate culture. Now it's all over the place. Speech equals violence. That was the big change you saw the beginning of the Trump administration from the left, they were just openly saying that your words that I don't like are the equivalent of violence because it makes me feel sad or unsafe or less than or whatever. Therefore, not only if speech equals violence, can the government shut it down. And as we know, the only speech that equals violence is conservative, according to the left. That's the way this game works. Not only does that happen, but if they use force to shut you down, they're justified in doing so. This is how Antifa came about. Remember the origins. They were showing up at college campuses threatening conservative speakers, threatening people that showed up to hear conservative speakers. And many of us said this is a terrible harbinger of things to come. And now we see this is all the way at the top of the Democrat Party. Say things that they don't like, and they will find a way to use the force of government even to shut you down. This is the death of free speech if this continues. And that's exactly the plan. Democrats think they have all the answers, and there's no need for robust debate or exchange of ideas because their ideas are right and your ideas are violence. This is what they really think. This is their actual belief. And they are using this. They're taking action on this idea. And now with greater information about what really happened on Capitol Hill, as we see more of the backstory, both in preparation for it and the social media giants' actions around it, a lot of stuff that does not support the overall Democrat narrative here. What they impeached the president for yesterday was essentially Trump called for an insurrection in the Capitol. That is a lie. That's not true. He didn't do that. And there are many reasons you could point to. I played the actual pertinent audio of what he said should happen peacefully. If someone says, I call for nonviolence, and then one of that person's adherents says, oh, they said nonviolence, but I'm going to be violent. Is it that person's fault? Well, only if you're a Republican, only if you're a conservative. This was planned for weeks in advance. That's now clear. There were people who were gathering together online, and this was what they wanted to do. So if that's the case, and it is, how can Donald Trump be guilty of incitement when there were preparations being made by people entirely independent of Trump and that predated the speech in which he called for nonviolence anyway? Right? This is not to excuse all the stuff said about the election at all. I've got a problem with that. I think it was exaggerated to us, the information that they were going to be able to present. It was exaggerated, the likelihood. Now, I always thought it was a very small likelihood, as you know, but it was exaggerated on purpose to Trump voters that there was still a real hope here that the election was going to go his way. And that's actual, there should be some political accountability for that. That was wrong. But this incitement to violence stuff and attacking the Capitol because of Trump, that's just not fair. It's not true. But it's not enough, you see. It's not enough to point out what was said about the election afterwards that's, in retrospect, that was inaccurate or it was just an out-and-out lie. Because Democrats lied about the 2016 election for 4 years, so we'll be able to dismiss that very, very quickly. A lot of people just say, well, Nancy Pelosi claimed the election was hijacked in the beginning of 2017, so what's that all about? No, they have to make it seem as though Trump is the leader of a domestic terrorist organization. That's what they're openly stating now. And that's because it gives them license not only to completely malign all of his supporters, which they just get joy from. I mean, they like hating Trump supporters is something that gives great joy to the left, deriding them, humiliating them. This, unfortunately for America, the Democrat Party really, really has a culture of looking down on all Trump supporters. That's just the way it is. Voters, I mean, anybody you vote for Trump, you're a bad person. They've adopted it. I don't think everybody who votes for Biden's a bad person. That's crazy. I think Joe Biden's a clown, and I think we're going to see just what a joke this whole presidency is when he's actually in charge. But then Kamala will take over, and we all know. But here's the other issue they've got. The social media companies all acted against Trump because they said he was the cause of this insurrection. Well, first of all, it was a riot. To call it an insurrection is also going beyond a fair view of the facts here. It was absolutely a riot, and it was criminal, it was wrong, and we've said that. But they really thought what? They were going to overtake the Capitol building and hold it? I mean, that's what a coup would be. That was the plan? I mean, I haven't seen any evidence to suggest that. I've certainly seen there were people that were running around taking selfies, and there were people that were attacking police officers, which is something that you can't do. It's a crime. You can't do that. But the social media companies shut Trump down because they said that he was a threat of violence. The Democrats then used this premise that Trump was himself a threat of violence to deplatform him. Well, Trump is still in office, and the same platforms where most of the planning for the riot occurred are very much still in business, because guess what? This won't be a surprise to you. It wasn't Parler where most of the actual riot planning occurred, according to left-wing analysts of this now in the media. Oh, it was happening somewhere else on the internet. A very wealthy, very, very powerful company, in fact. Hey, Team Buck, thank you so much for watching The First on YouTube. If you like this video, please click that little thumbs up button so then it will log as liked. And also, if you want to see more great content from The First, please click subscribe.